Let's get some analysis with Professor Michael Wesley. He's the Deputy Vice-Chancellor, International at the University of Melbourne. Professor Wesley, the reverberations of the AUKUS announcement, they continue. This week, Dan Tehan in Paris, unable to get a face-to-face with the French Trade Minister, the EU trade talks put back a month as well.
Yeah, let me start by saying, Kieran, that if Joe Biden didn't know that the French would be upset, that is an act of extraordinary naivety on his part. The fact that he would be unaware and not expect that a major NATO ally would be upset by about losing a major contract to another ally of the United States, or to the United States and another ally of the United States is just really quite extraordinary. But moving on to your question about Dan Tehan, yes, he's got a really, really difficult time ahead of him in Paris. The anger of the French government is continuing to be white hot. They might have started to patch things up with the United States, but they're in no mood to do the same with the Brits or with Australia. So I wouldn't expect to see Dan Tehan get too many high-level meetings while he's in Paris.
No, you wouldn't have thought so. At least he's there trying. There's some doubt as to whether the Prime Minister will go to Glasgow for the climate talks within a month from now. And it's a pretty big deal with the G20 in the days before it, and our senior allies like Johnson, like Biden, but many others attending both those commitments.
Look, I would find it extraordinary if the Prime Minister didn't go. This is a major international meeting. The issue of climate change is becoming increasingly pressing. It's making its way to the very top of global priorities at the moment. So for Australia's Prime Minister not to be there, to be talking to other world leaders would be extraordinary. Kieran, I'm just interpreting this as part of Scott Morrison's negotiating strategy back here at home. He's keeping particularly critics within his own party, guessing as to whether he'll go or not. I think he probably has calculated that if he announces that he's going, it will cause critics to dig their heels in. And so I think he's desperately trying to find a way to close the deal here at home and then make his way to Europe later on this month.
Now, it sounds like there will be some progress. I spoke to the Federal Health Minister, former minister in this space as well, a few moons ago, but he was very confident that there'd be some positive progress in terms of Australia's policy on it. But that's one thing. The other thing is to be there to advocate that position as well, face to face. And I guess the other thing is with the G20, the Prime Minister needs to take every chance he can get to try and get face to face with other world leaders, not the least of which the Chinese president, if there's to be any thawing in those ties.
Yeah, look, that's right. And, you know, it takes place, this conference will take place against the backdrop of climate summits that go back to Rio in '92, of course, Kyoto in '97, and then we had Copenhagen in 2009. All of these are incredibly important occasions for our prime ministers and for the Australian governments. At times, Australia has been able to get its own way, most famously, of course, in Kyoto. At other times, Copenhagen, Kevin Rudd wasn't able to achieve the sort of outcome that he wanted. And there have always been domestic ramifications from those sorts of summits. So the stakes are extremely high, and I would not like to speculate on how influential Australia will be if its head of government chooses not to go, and if Australia is represented by someone other than Scott Morrison. So I think he absolutely has to be there for Australia to have its voice heard, and also to make sure that its interests are borne out in the final agreement.
Finally, the last issue I wanted to touch on with you today is the Taiwan-China tensions. More Chinese flights into the Taiwanese airspace. How worried are you about this at the moment?
Oh, look, it's a very worrying situation. We've seen this is a tactic that China uses. It uses this sort of tactic against Japan from time to time over the disputed islands between Japan and China, but also it's done this regularly in the past. These forms of tensions and flaring ups have occurred all the way back into the 1950s. There is no question that China is upping the ante here, but I would also say that countries like Taiwan and Japan that face this sort of provocation repeatedly are the world champions at managing it, at going up to a line that says we are taking this seriously, we are defending our interests, but we will not be provoked by China into overreacting and giving China an excuse to escalate further. So really the region's hopes rest on the competence and the cool-headedness of the Taiwanese, and we'll just have to hope that this is yet another display of really quite self-defeating Chinese attempts to intimidate the Taiwanese.
Professor Wesley from the University of Melbourne, thanks for your insights as always. I appreciate it.
Pleasure.